Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of April 20th, 2020. First, let's do a really quick recap of the predictions for the previous week. As far as the stock market directions, I basically predicted for the previous week that the market will be going up every day. And let's see, Monday, I believe it was a mixed result. I think NASDAQ was up and Dow Jones was down, or the other way around. But basically it was mixed. Then on Tuesday, market went up. On Wednesday, there was a decent drop. So I predicted up, and it was actually a drop. Then on Thursday, both NASDAQ and Dow Jones were up. And on Friday, it was also an up day. In terms of other ongoing predictions, we have still this ongoing conjunction between Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, which typically corresponds with a variety of major events such as various disasters, strong earthquakes, geopolitical tensions, reshuffling in the leadership of either corporations, like large established corporations, or governments. And we did have some noteworthy earthquakes last week. And we had a 6.0 in Honduras, 6.6, and then 6.3 in Japan. And again, this particular month of April, I wouldn't say that's the has the strongest sort of signature for necessarily earthquakes. And however, we will continue experiencing this influence throughout the end of the year, and we will continue having this kind of sort of a high alert of either disasters or either man-made or sort of bad weather type of issues, like I said, through the end of 2020. And in the upcoming months, I would particularly pay attention to around early to mid-June and then August. Let's say especially in June, it may be associated with wet weather, and August could be pretty much anything goes, including, strong storms, power outages, and earthquakes, as well as even a nuclear type of, malfunctioning at nuclear power plants. Let's see. In terms of news, it was actually, I didn't really follow things very closely, and two, honestly, just Googling around, I didn't really see too many headlines that really jumped at me that were like, oh my, that's exactly what I predicted. However, just something that I saw. I did have a prediction at my blog at lasunka.com that usually comes up the day before I record these videos, but basically reading from my own blog here, it's for April 14th and 15th, I was predicted that there would be some increased news about healthcare, pharmaceuticals, doctors, medicines, treatments, and particularly it may involve areas such as head, face, neck, and or will relate to like burns, cuts, or children or youthful appearance. And I didn't really see necessarily anything that specifically fits this description. Again, I just may not be aware of something, or something really major just didn't come up. I did see news on the 17th of April that apparently MIT developed some sort of a way or released a design for mass manufacturing of disposable face shields for healthcare professionals, and obviously it covers this exact area. I'm not sure how well this fits. I was thinking more of something that would be like treating wounds of, say, somebody who is, fighting literally somewhere out there. I also had some new prediction about increased news about, say, leaders or athletes and potentially somebody getting hurt in an accident or something like that, and I didn't really see that. Again, I'm sure somebody somewhere who is considered a leader may have, gotten hurt last week, but I didn't see anything major in the news regarding that. Another prediction that I had that I think may have sort of had news that were relevant to that was for April 13th through 15th. I expected increased probability of announcements of a start of some new project, and that I was thinking that would be related to topics like debt, loans, taxes, mining, nuclear power, or some underground secretive activities. And I did see on the 17th, there was some article basically saying that recently the UAE announced that their first reactor of the Barak nuclear power plant, which is going to be the first nuclear power plant in the Arab world, is scheduled to come online within a few months. So I'm not sure when. The article was dated the April 17th, so I'm not sure when exactly the announcement was made, but it's right around that same time period. And the influence we have right now, in addition to this sort of an announcement of a new project or a start of something that I made for this last week, we do have Pluto conjunct Jupiter in Capricorn, and this is something that's going to be again in place for the entire year pretty much, and that specifically corresponds with increased or expansion of projects related to nuclear power or nuclear weapons or secrets, underground locations, underground storage, as well as radiation, unfortunately, as well as, of course, death, because again, underground is burials. Pluto in general rules things like death, but of course rebirth and transformation. So basically at the same time, my prediction was that there may be some leader or leaders either opposing these projects or arguing against them. And again, I haven't necessarily seen in that article about this nuclear power plant any specific mentions of specific leaders opposing this. However, it did say that initially this plant was going to come online late 2017. However, it faced a number of delays because there's some concerns about safety and regulatory environments, and also there are some concerns about the security of this plant because it is obviously in the Middle East. So that I would say the news is very similar to what I was sort of thinking, the type of manifestation of the aspect that I thought that might come up last week. And as I mentioned, we also had this other news that I mentioned last week about the fires around Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Luckily, I think the weather had helped with the rains and fires were stopped. I'm sure firefighters, of course, fought hard to stop them as well. At the same time, with the Saturn and Pluto being there, which typically corresponds with major disasters, and of course we have this COVID-19 and various kind of negative effects on the economy this whole year, as well as Pluto being there with Jupiter, and Jupiter just makes things kind of go on a grander scale to the excess, sort of multiplying, expanding, as you can think of, this large planet kind of making things just go out of control, basically, or out of proportions. And Pluto obviously has to do with power and changes in power, changes in, sort of laws, because Jupiter also has to do with laws, but also perhaps really major changes that have to do with other Plutonian topics, which again, underground storage, recycling. We have sort of increased news about deaths. We, have these web pages like by Johns Hopkins University showing, the statistics, how many people died of COVID-19, etc. And just kind of more increased sort of focus on these sort of topics. And now we have news, came up on the 20th of April, major concerns about oil prices, again, because of storage. I'm not sure where exactly oil is typically stored. I would imagine some of it may be underground. But basically something that's like, again, Jupiter has to do with kind of going overboard. And so yeah, indeed, but storage of other things that may be also stored underground or stored in secrecy, or things that are done in secrecy may also this year, especially within the same time of, as other news about other similar sort of subject may come up. So, for example, Pluto has to do with violence or suppression of, for example, like trafficking of women and children would be something like that, or drug trafficking or any sort of terrorist attack. So basically when we have news about one such area where things are being either hidden or suppressed or going overboard, we may expect that around the same time there might be similar manifestations of other similar sort of topics that again are ruled by the same planets. So what I'm trying to say is that there may potentially be upcoming news later this year that may may not necessarily of positive kind. Either will be, again, expansion of nuclear power, just in general, more power plants being built, but it could also indicate, again, disaster combined with radiation escaping, or just increased news about violent attacks, and or about some activities that were previously being hidden. Say some top leaders of governments or corporations were engaged in some unsavory activities, from just hiding taxes to, hiding other secrets, and those things may not come up to the surface just because, again, the capacity kind of for these secrets being hidden, just like capacity for things being stored underground, will basically exceed its limits. So moving on to other predictions for this week, as well as the ongoing background influences. The peak sort of influence for this week of potential earthquakes and other disasters or some major geopolitical changes, reshuffling at the tops of the governments, corporations, peaks this week on April 24-26, so towards the end of the week. However, as I said, in upcoming months, I would say June and then August would be even more significant sort of months for even kind of greater shifts or disasters. Then also we have, in addition to this, we have another sort of energy that has to do with kind of governments or large corporations stepping in to impose greater regulations, controls, embargoes, taxes, tariffs, or to kind of either cut losses or impose regulations that lead to losses, as well as increased news about large structures, or either projects that begin such structures or something that's now being, such as dam or bridge, some infrastructure kind of changes. So again, this on-off all year, we will hear kind of more news about that. And these may be either shakeups literally at the tops of corporations with a lot of restructuring, bankruptcies, changes in power and leadership, as well as, of course, wars, disasters of sort of a natural kind as well. And these may be accompanied by anti-government protests, violence, including shootings, fires, etc. And of course, also, like I said, news about the corruptions, various scandals. And in the upcoming sort of month of August, pretty much from the beginning to the end, it really looks quite tense and sort of prone to such news popping up almost every day, including, say, August 30th. I mean, there's just too many dates to even sort of bother listing. And notably also for both US and China, during the month of August, there will be some important transits to the charts of those individual countries. So for US particularly, it may bring focus on governmental and corporate restructuring, leadership changes, power shifts, as well as rates, loans, debt, and bankruptcies. And for the bankruptcies, the particular areas most affected may be related to retail sales, communication, transportation, travel, social media, newspapers, car manufacturers, rental car businesses, anything that has to do with like shipping, traveling, selling things, is kind of an exchange of either information or goods on a short sort of scale, not internationally, but rather locally. And there may also be, for the US specifically, significant changes around in August or news related to schools or young sort of students, as well as real estate, farming, and food production. There may be some concerns about either increased regulations or delays or shortages, lack of safety, lack of security about it, and also major changes in how these businesses function. So thinking that August is usually at the end of August, the schools reopen, which right now I think they're mostly closed in the US, it's possible that that might indicate that there may be continuing concerns about this COVID situation, because if indeed they need to continue to, the education needs to continue to stay online, that it's possible that basically this would be the manifestation of what I'm seeing basically in the transits to US chart, is that there may be some rethinking about whether or not to reopen schools, and there might be delays, which means that again things may continue being suspended, and they may lead obviously to bankruptcies. So for China, August is also an important month, and particularly August 9th through the 17th may be quite significant. And at that time, again for China, there may be increased focus on healthcare, pharmaceuticals, navy, oil, secretive activities, chemicals, pollution, recycling, locations that are sort of remote, removed, on the water, secluded, could be even monasteries, could be any sort of, islands, anything like that. And as I mentioned before, for China, I see that actually transits that were triggered when we heard kind of increased news initially about the COVID-19, back in like December, January. Those same aspects, those same transits actually will pick back up, and the sort of even the more significant time for China related to sort of the aspects and issues related to like healthcare, various like diseases, but also of course pollution, chemicals, seclusion, like hospital or prison would be a place of seclusion. Those actually will pick up again August through November, and early November, especially November 9th through 13th, seem to be quite significant. Whether this is going to be specifically related to COVID-19, I think so, yes. But it could be also news along the lines of like healthcare reform, which again, those two things can be occurring at once. So kind of rethinking of how healthcare is managed, or how sort of hospitals are managed, or improving, situation related to, say, pollution or recycling. All of those topics will continue to be kind of important for China, and especially August through November, and in August is going to be 9th through 17th. And then also for US, this whole year and actually into next year, yet again, there's an important sort of influence there, which specifically it relates to international agreements, negotiations, diplomatic relations. So we will continue having these ongoing negotiations this year, next year. And this year, the first sort of like there are two major periods. One will end about July 7th, but then also November 16th through December 12th will be another sort of follow-up period where we will hear again increased focus on these kind of negotiations. At the same time, again, there may be some major changes related to, again, taxes, loans, debt, rates, bankruptcies, and there may be increased news about some sort of a end of one cycle and beginning of another, and this may go through some sort of, again, death of businesses, or literally death of some leaders, or news about like spying, hacking, maybe some businesses get, hacked, for example, some whistleblower may come up, and as I said before, we may hear kind of more news just because, right now it will be harder to keep news that are underground, just like it's harder to keep, those, oil stored somewhere, like things will just start to overflow. So if there are any unsavory activities that either corporations or their leaders, for example, were engaged in, those things may come up again through perhaps whistleblowing, or just literally something spills, there is pollution, and so again, it's hard to hide that. And specific locations may involve like mountainous locations, underground locations, such as like coal or mining company, trash, recycling, or nuclear power. And let's see, there may also be increased focus on maternal health, procreation, sexually transmitted diseases, and or safety of children. And there may also be, again, for the US this whole year, but especially, like I said, through this July 7th and then mid-November to mid-December, there may be increased focus on, again, reorganization of businesses, restructuring of businesses, and improving sort of safety and stability. And this may be done through increasing controls of the government, such as controls imposed on financial flows, real estate investments, or food production, or some sort of stricter guidelines on financial institutions, reduced cash flow, changes in taxes, like sales tax, for example, controls to prevent insurance fraud, or to make some changes to, conditions under which, say, loans are given. And we have seen already some of those news. And of course, under, the COVID-19 situation, we will hear more news where, the tax filing deadline in the US was moved from April 15th to July 15th. And There's some programs implemented, I guess, to help small businesses by giving them some loans. I'm not sure if it was more money under some sort of different conditions or what exactly the details were, but we'll definitely hear more of that throughout the year. And again, now between now and July 7th, and then again in November, mid-November to mid-December. And also it will continue into 2021, and that's for the US. For oil, as I said, on the 20th, which is I'm recording, it's on the 20th of April already, but I did post this prediction already several weeks back. I said specifically that I expect another news coming up about oil prices on April 30th through May 1st, and there may be increased concerns again at that time about the value of oil, sales of oil and gas, and this may coincide with a market drop. And then again into June 8th through 15th, especially June 10th and 11th, we may again hear about some problems or concerns about oil prices or news about some various upsets, accidents like burning of oil, fighting over oil, explosions, like a rocket attack on some oil facility, for example. And June 10, 11 again may see a market drop. So on the 20th, as I mentioned earlier, we had a really big, and I guess never before seen drop in oil prices, leading to like almost negative prices of crude oil. And at the same time, again, we're not even on the 30th yet, so I do see, obviously, it's in transits occur, things kind of build up and then they kind of slowly move, I guess, away. So we will have the exact aspect that will be between, tense aspect between Neptune, which I see often relates to oil kind of news, and Venus, which has to do with money, value, etc. This will actually come up, to be more exact, on April 30th through May 1st. So if we already have these negative news or suppressing, depressing, stressful news about oil come, already on the 20th, so definitely I would say this will not become better between now and May 1st, and it will probably continue building up until perhaps either 30th and or May 1st may see like a bottom. Either some extra kind of a strong focus on the oil. I don't know how much sort of further down can it go, but certainly there'll be more concerns about the value of oil, and at the same time there may be a market drop where on the 30th of April and or May 1st there may be a really strong drop. However, it may also be followed by a sort of an upswing, and I'm not sure if the swing may come on the 1st of May or on the 2nd of May. I forget what days of the week those are, but right around then there may be like this swing where we may see a bottom of the market, but then followed by a sharp rise. So moving on to the days of the week in terms of the market direction, I think market will be down all days of the week, except there's a slight chance, 55% chance, that Wednesday may be an up day. On the 20th, I did see already this came true as the market went down on Monday, and my prediction, which again I posted it on Sunday on my blog at tolstunka.com, that there may be concerns about currencies, financial regulations, or earnings, and there may be concerns that projects are progressing slowly. There are excessive regulations, losses, or drop in value. I'm not sure. Again, I didn't necessarily have time to follow it very carefully. Whether there are a lot of news about, say, earnings or currencies, but they certainly had this news about oil dropping, which I did not specifically predict for the 20th. I do predict that to still, come up early next week. For China, April 20th and 21st may see increased focus on earnings, currency, financial institutions, and banks. China may announce some new project related to the financial domain. It may be to support their currency or to increase earnings, especially from retail, sales, or communication transportation businesses, travel also. And again, for China, there may be increased concerns about cash availability or financial losses, and specifically as it relates to partnerships or international agreements. So there may be some discussions or news, out of China where they think that, an agreement that's being discussed or just entered or about to be entered into is unfavorable for China, and therefore it may be delayed. Discussions may be delayed to negotiate more favorable terms. So at this time, 20th and 21st, there may be, again, if there are any ongoing agreements, they may run into trouble, including arguments or heated debates. And China at this point may take like a strong position to resist any pressure or attempt to exert pressure on it, or may try to exert pressure on the partners. Either way, the agreement may not come easily at this time. And at the same time, there may also be increased news about any sort of agreements or partnerships related to either military or sports. Then later in the week, on the 23rd and 24th, for China, yet again, it's important sort of time where there may be increased focus and news about leadership, status in the world, international partnerships and agreements. And yet again, at this time, if there are any ongoing partnership negotiations or agreements, they may run into trouble. And this may, at this point, will be less to do with like heated, overt, kind of aggressive or assertive pressure, but rather because of either China doing something underhanded or some other partner trying to play, power plays on China, and China will be, of course, resisting that. So there may be mutual accusations of hacking, spying, manipulations, and power plays. There may also be increased news about rates, loans, debt, taxes, tariffs, nuclear power, and recycling. And if there are, again, any ongoing negotiations, they may be kind of difficult for the agreements to be achieved at this time. And either China may try to manipulate the situation through a power play, or some other partner or partners of China may try to kind of engage in some manipulative behaviors. In either way, the agreement will be either postponed, or it may not be, the terms may not be the best and may be revised later, because again, this is not a very good time for China to be entering any such agreements. Or agreement is entered into under some pressure, which again, it may lead to things kind of exploding later. And this made me think of, and I didn't write about this anywhere, but I just saw that apparently, and I don't know how true this is, that it was a North Korean leader has undergone or is undergoing heart surgery, and his health is not doing so well or something like that. And of course, there's always concern about North Korea and nuclear power. So it's possible that these concerns that I just mentioned for China may not be related to, say, agreements about nuclear power, but just, any partners that they may have with whom there's any exchange of either recyclables or nuclear power, weapons or components that are necessary, equipment or fuel for power plants, basically anything to do with the nuclear power stuff. This may come to be an important topic for China, especially for the 23rd, 24th of April. And these agreements may be either tense, or things may be negotiated, or there may be secrets surrounding that, or things may be done through, again, one side pressuring another. So if indeed there's any sort of problem with North Korea, not necessarily problems, but rather if there are some concerns about, say, the health of their leader or some changes there, which again, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction definitely is something that, as we've seen throughout this whole year and the previous year as well, does often coincide with leaders who were in power for a long time, or older leaders, etc., being removed or stepping away voluntarily. And indeed, for China, this is the time where they may be dealing with some partners and issues, either having to deal with, again, the power plays in negotiations, but also dealing literally and negotiating things that relate to nuclear power. So if there are any events there coming out of North Korea, indeed, for China this week, they will be focused on addressing nuclear power related issues with their partners, whatever those issues may be. Probably something tense, something that is not pleasant. So let's see, and Friday of this week, the 24th of April, looks kind of the most, let's say, tense day of the work week, and there's a fairly strong probability, in my opinion, of market going down. However, it's not going to be the end of the week. In fact, 24th through the 26th, especially the 25th, which is Saturday, may see increased probability of either surprising or unexpected developments related to earnings, currencies, including cryptocurrencies, financial institutions, and or banks. So for example, there may be some sudden increase or decrease in the sales of some cryptocurrency, or maybe a vault is access is denied, or some service is suspended, or there is some project is canceled, or access again to people can't access their money, or there's some service again the outages or power outages, or there may be some surprising announcement by a financial institution, for example acquisition or restructuring, or changes in their terms of service, for example. Additionally, they might be against these sudden or surprising or unexpected projects related to IT, aerospace, telecoms, high-tech, electronic gadgets, electric cars, electric power companies, etc. And as I said, these news may peak on the 25th, which is Saturday, and subsequently they may lead to concerns about the agreements, shipments, travel, sales, or governmental regulations of these type of businesses. And they may lead to, if there's an agreement, like a sales agreement, for example, or any sort of regulations, there might be delays, shipments may be delayed, travel may be delayed, and or there may be concerns that some additional regulations are coming up, and again, they may affect travel or shipments of goods and delay those. And glance ahead, as I already mentioned, I actually think that April 30th through May 1st may see even stronger news about the value of oil, gas, but also increased news about pharmaceuticals, healthcare, chemicals, pollution, as well as lies or deceptions. And there may be concerns about value of related products. This could also involve, say, beverages, especially alcoholic beverages, as well as movies or movie equipment or audio equipment, music, etc. And or there may also be increased news about, say, religion. It's also on those same dates, the 30th of April through May 1st, there might be yet again surprising or sudden developments related to IT, aerospace, cars, like electric cars especially, social media, IT, tech, electronic gadgets, power companies, etc. And with relation to either finance and banks. So either these companies may receive more loans, or they may obviously report some greater than expected shortages, or perhaps there may be increased news about just, again, their financial status, for example. And in addition to that, there may also be weather-wise increased winds and storms, electric storms, basically that may lead to power outages or tornadoes, something like that. That's things that develop suddenly, and suddenly they quiet down. Suddenly things pass as well, but they may lead to power outages, accidents, or there may be some sudden airborne attacks, so any sort of drones, rockets, etc. And or there may be sudden developments that are surprising but of positive nature, such as announcements of various innovations and something that's, new, related to aerospace, for example. But I would say more likely that there may be disruptions. So disruptions could also include, like I said, any online behaviors that has to do with payments, for example. So online shopping, again, maybe a power outage, or some surprising news about any sort of online retailers, and again, that has to do with how they process payments. So that wraps this up for me for this week, and I hope you're staying safe and in good spirits, and I'll continue on, and I'll see you guys next week. Until then, have a great week, everyone. Bye.